Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. We got 3 people. That's not enough. We need more. Waiting for a few minutes. I want to see if people trickle into the stream. You guys ready for this thing to be over? I mean, we're so close. You have about a week and a half and you're done. Actually, a week from tomorrow. Let's see here. Yeah, the last day to take the exam will be next Thursday. So it won't be like a regular week where you have until Sunday night. So yeah, it'll be a bit of a shorter week next week. Four people. Four is good. A few more. A few more. We'll give it a few more minutes. 5. Yes. Loving it. So the 5 of you watching, I'm curious. Our restaurants are starting to open back up in Sevier County, and are any of you going to brave a restaurant? Like, are you craving some particular food that you've been missing for the last 6 weeks? Have we been doing this 6 weeks? 6, 7 weeks? It feels like more. Yeah, I guess so. About that, about 6 weeks we've been going like this. And when we get started with the Kahoot, make sure you guys remind me to blank my camera so that I can show you the full Kahoot screen. Definitely do that. I picked up a few more. 6. Good. A few more minutes. We'll get going. Just want to make sure as many people can take part in the game as possible. Kahoots are no fun if people are not taking part and missing questions. Like, I particularly enjoy it when we miss, because that tells me what you don't understand as well. So we can spend a little bit of time talking about that kind of stuff. As we wait for a couple more people to log in, hopefully you caught my vlog or live stream yesterday about grades and all that kind of good stuff. And so if there are any questions I can answer while we wait, please throw them in chat. Otherwise, I'll assume silence means that you're all completely lucid on everything and you need nothing from Terry. Two more minutes. 11:08. We're kicking it off. I'm just giving a few minutes to make sure people can get in if they want to get in. While I do that, I'll go ahead and start the game so some of you can load up your app. Assuming it's the Teach. I sure hope so. Yeah, classic. That's what we need. All right, there's our game pen, guys. I'll put it in chat just in case people don't see it on the screen. Game pen. Whenever they log in, at least. 1164 4. 911-644. Yeah. Hey, Tiffany. Tiffany's here. Yay. We need some more. Come on, jump in, guys. Emily is here. Excellent. Seven people watching. I know there are more than just two people. Come on. Jump into the Kahoot. We'll see how you do. Thank you, Amberlyn, for jumping in. Can I make it to 4? Can we get 4 people? We got 3. Can we get at least 4 players? 1 for each answer. How about that? 8 people watching. Good. That means another person can jump in the game. Jump in. One more. I just need one more person to jump in, guys. Come on. Come on. One more person. I got Amberlyn, Emily, and Tiffany. I got no male representation at all. Come on. Although, I don't need a male. I just need one more student. Even if you're a female. Jump in. Come on. Come on. One more. Thank you. Thank you for repping the males, Levi. I appreciate that. All right, with that, we got 4. Let's roll. Let's start the game. Thank you, Levi. Let me make it full screen. Oh, and you guys forgot to tell me to kill my camera. If it blocks the last answer, I'll tell you what that answer is. Hold on. The bottom left answer is psychopathology. Bottom left is psychopathology. The yellow bottom left is psychopathology. I'm killing my camera as soon as this question's over. And the top graphic. Why did that set so much time? Please answer. Please everyone answer so we don't have to wait for the whole time. Thank you. Oh, you guys are good. Yeah, psychopathology. Hold on a second. Let me turn off a couple things. Let's turn off my webcam. There. That should look better. Hold on. We're going to go back and look. Yeah, perfect. That looks a lot better. So now I can definitely full screen it and it won't block anything. Cool. All right, here we go. Next question. It would not be neuroscience. Neuroscience would be the scientific study of the brain and the parts of the brain and how the brain is laid out, like certain sections. Remember we talked about way back in chapter 2, the occipital lobe, temporal lobe, all these sections of the brain. That's neuroscience. The disorders, psychopathology. Emily in the lead. Yes, stress. And I threw distress in there to try and trick you guys. Remember, stress, two types of stress. Distress is the kind of bad stress that you have, and that causes burnout, causes lots of problems. Eustress is that good stress, like when you challenge yourself, but it's still a stressful experience. Um, it's not, do I have enough money to pay the rent? That's distress, right? Eustress is, hey, I'm taking on a new degree. Like you guys put a lot of eustress on yourself this semester. I'm taking on this class, this college level class. I could just take the easy route, right? Take an easy class at high school, or not take a class at all because I got enough credits. But no, instead you took on some eustress, a challenge that results in a rewarding outcome. So both of those things cause us to have physical, emotional, and cognitive changes in our body. Just one is kind of bad, distress, and one is good. But they both cause changes. So I hope that makes sense. All right, male rep Levi moving up the leaderboard. All right, good deal. I don't know why I made some of these 60 seconds. Yeah, hopefully we won't take that much time. So hopefully everyone will answer. Very good. Absolutely. Remember, we're talking about that keyword in that answer, deviate as in deviation. Remember we said a couple standard deviations to either side of the mean in the bell curve is what? Abnormal. You can think about that with IQ, for example, right? You can look at IQ scores that are above 135. We call those abnormally high. We can look at IQ scores of below, let's say, 60, and we call those abnormally low. And we place those two people in different interventions. People with abnormally high IQ, what do? We put them in gifted and talented. People with abnormally low IQ, what do? We put them in special education classes. Emily is in the lead and on fire, but just barely ahead of both Amberlyn and Levi. Tiffany, I know you're going to make a comeback here. I can feel it. Very good. Yeah, definitely social nonconformity. And this comes back to this question of chapter 13 about, disorders. The question is, what is normal and what is abnormal, right, guys? And there are essentially, a couple of ways you can assess abnormality. One is from the previous slide we talked about, and that is you can measure someone on some kind of test, and you can collect the quantitative numbers of that test, like an IQ test, and you can put it on a bell curve. And for the one person who said statistically abnormal, you can statistically look at that. But that was on the previous question. This question is another way you can do it, and that is you can look at widely accepted norms. Now, remember what norms are. Norms are unspoken rules for how you conduct yourself. For example, in sexual disorders, um, there are norms, there are unspoken rules about, let's say, the behavior of masturbation, right? And that unspoken rules, it's fairly normal for most human beings to engage in that behavior, right? It is. However, it is abnormal when people do things like flash someone. Uh, we call that exhibitionist, and then retreat to a place and masturbate to the idea of their facial expression that you just horrified this person, or voyeurism, people who spy on other people sexually and engage in masturbation, not normal. So in one context, right, you can see where it's accepted and a normal thing that that's a private human behavior. On the other hand, you could see where it's used in certain social settings that we consider to be horribly abnormal. So social nonconformity is another way to assess abnormality. All right. Emily still in the lead. Amber Lynn right behind her. Male. Levi. Levi and then Tiffany following. DSM-5. What is that? What is that? The DSM-5. 100% certain a question like this will be on your exam. 100%. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's the manual that psychologists use to make diagnoses of disorders. The depressive scale of modalities, that's a particular scale we use. It's not an actual manual. The DSM-5, it's in 5th edition. That's what the 5 stands for. Is a Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. All right. Sorry, Levi. I think I just gave this away. All right, that last little bit gave you it's a guide to use to identify and diagnose disorders, mental disorders. Very good. Very good. Everyone got that right. This goes to the kind of categories of disorders, guys. So, someone who's euphoric or depressed, what category disorders are we talking about here? Yes, mood disorders. Insanity is not a good answer to any question I give you, essentially, because it's not a term psychologists use, right? That's a term that lawyers and judges and juries use. Um, Dissociative disorders would be disorders like fugue and DID, dissociative identity disorder, what people often call multiple personalities. Anxiety disorders would be things like PTSD, agoraphobia, various phobias. Mood disorders would be things like depression, bipolar disorder. Yeah, it's a good job. Oh, I skipped over that. Sorry. Yes. Um, Obsessive compulsive disorders are involved with unnecessary repetitious behaviors. Contamination fears, washing hands. I'm not talking about the way we wash hands right now, but without fear of contamination, with legitimate fear of contamination, we wash our hands quite a bit. But even us today, like if you guys notice that your hands are dry from washing them so much, I've read case studies where people wash their hands so often that suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder. They have blisters all over their palms and the tops of their hands in between their fingers. That level of repetitious behavior. We have a new leader, Amber Lynn. All right. But Levi's on fire. Just want to point that out. Delusion is a false belief. I would contrast it with a hallucination, but I don't want to do that because I think you're having a question over that later. But delusion is belief. Belief. Delusions of grandeur. I'm all powerful. I'm God. Delusions of persecution or paranoia. They're out to get me. They want to hurt me. Someone's trying to harm me. Delusions of control. I can control people. I can control things around me. So different delusions are different beliefs, and you'll typically see this with disorders like schizophrenia, for example. Fast, definitely. So if delusions are about belief, hallucinations are about your sensory systems. Delusions involve thinking and beliefs. Hallucinations involve sensory breakdowns. That is, you hear voices that aren't there, you see things that aren't there, you smell things that aren't there, you feel things that aren't there. Very good. Everyone got it right. Excellent. Common symptom for schizophrenia, alternating moods. Let's talk about why that's not a good answer. That'd be mood disorder, right? That would be bipolar, actually. Let's talk about panic attacks would be anxiety disorders. Amnesia for their alternative personality, that would be a dissociative disorder. And the two of you picked correctly, yes. Paranoia, I just mentioned that, delusions of persecution or paranoia are a big aspect of schizophrenia. And that's exactly the correct answer. We might have some separation here. All right. Tiffany moving up and on fire. Notice that word all. All abnormal behavior. A core feature of all abnormal behavior is what? Okay. Can one really argue that all abnormal behavior is learned? No. No. Let's take something like schizophrenia, for example. Schizophrenia is not learned. It's genetic. It comes from the biological perspective. So, I said at the beginning of that question, that, anytime you see that, you have to be very careful about the way you select a response. While not all abnormal behavior is learned, and not all of it's culturally absolute, and not all of it is dependent on age, let me tell you what all of it is: maladaptive. It makes it that your life is not as easy to adapt to day in and day out. So it's all maladaptive. We've got this kind of leaderboard flip-flopping between Tiffany and Amberlynn and Emily. She was up there. And Eli, Levi, I'm waiting for the comeback. Levi, waiting for the comeback. Okay, so let's talk about the three of you why you chose that answer. Um, Bipolar type 2 is different than bipolar type 1 in this way. In bipolar type 1, you have full manic and full depressive periods or episodes. Okay? Bipolar type 2, you have full depression with what's called hypomania or below full manic episodes. So you got full depression in bipolar type 2, but only partial mania or below normal hypomania. Bipolar type 1, both full mania, full depression. I probably just gave away another question, but there you go. All right, Tiffany increases her lead here. It's from the abnormality chapter. What do you guys think? 3% of our population is homosexual. If you look at the percentage of children raised by gay parents, that percent of those children that are homosexual, 3%. No difference. They don't rub their gayness off on children. They don't model it. It's about the same as the regular population, about 3%. Yes, it's definitely not a psychiatric term. Sorry for the one person to answer that. Definitely, you're gonna probably see a question. No, you're 100% gonna see a question on the test about this. Sandy's a legal term, court of law, not a psychological term. Hey, we have a new player in the game. Great. Don't know who it is, but cool symbols. Here we go. We're split all over on this one. Okay. Um, as I mentioned just a few slides ago, bipolar 1 is when someone has full mania and full depression. Not mostly depressed or partially manic or partially manic and partially depressed. Bipolar type 1 is full depression, episodes, and swings of full depression and full mania. Bipolar type 2, full depression, hypo, or partial mania. Yes, problem focused coping. In the health psychology chapter, there was a big section over coping and different strategies you can use to cope. One of them is ignore, which is not healthy, by the way. You just ignore the stressors in your life, which doesn't usually result in good outcomes for you. Two, you can engage in what's called emotional focused coping, and a lot of you see this a lot, right? It's almost natural, where people have a stressor and they have a visceral emotional reaction. That is, they get angry, they get worried, they get anxiety filled. They deal with the stress by externalizing emotion. And then you have problem focused coping. And that is people that engage in direct actions like gathering resources, relying on other people, thinking their way through it without allowing the emotion to overwhelm them. So, good job. Back to the disorders chapter here. Yes, when it comes to desire, or the desire to have sex, arousal, the blood flow needed to have sex, those are dysfunction. Something's not working right. Sexual deviances would be things like pedophilia, necrophilia, voyeurism, all the some of the things I mentioned before about masturbation. Those would be deviancies, not necessarily dysfunctions. Okay, negative disorder or self-defeating thoughts that underlie depression, according to what? What view? Right? And I'm gonna answer your question in a second, Levi. I promise. I just saw it. Remember that in psychopathology, the scientific study of disorders, there's no silver bullet in explaining how or why often a disorder has onset or occurs. Rather, you look at it from multiple dimensions, multiple explanations or theories. So, with depression, let's tackle that real quick. The psychoanalytical view would say depression is arises from negative resulting conflicts between id, ego, and superego. Overuse of defense mechanisms. We saw a bit of that in the therapy session I showed yesterday with Linda, with her having depression because she learned to be a pleasing person early on in her life, and she's used that over and over again to her own detriment. So more about like defense mechanisms, your early childhood life, what you learn there, and how it carries forward. The behavioral view would be something like modeling. So they would say that the way that depression happens is you learn it by watching someone else. So children often, adolescents often become depressed because their parents are depressed, for example. The Gestaltist view really doesn't have a, a take on disorders. They're more about cognition and learning and perception, so really it's not a good choice. But the best choice is cognitive, and here's why. Thoughts. Anytime you hear the term thinking or thoughts, you should, I can wait and move on for a second, Tiffany. You should be thinking about the cognitive view. So let's back up for a second and let me answer Levi's question. Mania. Mania is the opposite of depression. People in manic states are very happy, very excited, very up, if you will. Their arousal levels is very high and up. And you're probably thinking, what's wrong with that? Sounds like, what's so bad about being in a manic phase? Well, often people suffering from bipolar disorder who are in manic phases also lose control of their inhibition systems. So, for example, when you're up and you're happy and everything's good, you know what you tend to do? Spend too much money, blow through your resources, uh, violate agreements in your relationship. Oftentimes, people in full manic episodes will end up having sex with people they don't know. They can't control their behavior, so someone says something to them, makes them angry, they lash out in violence at them. Think about it. Like you and I, when we're threatened or when we're verbally assaulted, there's part of us that wants to lash out violently, right? But there's a part of you that controls it and says, no, that's not the right thing to do. That's inhibition that controls that. Someone's in a manic state, full blown manic state, they lose that control. They violently lash out at people. In fact, if you watch the videos I linked last week about Mary, the bipolar patient, in her therapy session, she talks about many times like beating people up, beating her husband up, punching a little girl. She talks about lots of violent kind of control, loss of control. So does that make sense, Levi? As I explained a full manic? And another thing people say is, it doesn't sound like it's a bad thing other than control. Well, how about this? You can't sleep. You're so up, you're so high, not on drugs, but in mood, you can't sleep at night. And that's a problem for a lot of people. So hopefully that makes sense, Levi. Okay, I'm glad you're good, Tiffany. So I'm going to roll on, but Levi, you can stop me if you need more clarification. I certainly hope it's not just a normal high schooler, but I get what you're saying in terms of high arousal, high mood. Gotcha. Which of the following terms feelings of apprehension, dread, or uneasiness? That's definitely anxiety. Okay, so for the one person answer fear, I know these are kind of all similar, right? Anxiety, fear, phobia. Let's differentiate the three of them. Fear is present oriented. Stay with me. If a snake appears in front of you, you experience fear. It's normal. It's present. It's something's in front of you. It's initiating a response of release of norepinephrine or adrenaline, and you become fearful. And sometimes you do one of two things: you fight or you run, fight or flight. Fear is present oriented. When it comes to apprehension, dread, or uneasiness, those are future oriented. So people right now, for example, during this COVID crisis that we're in, a lot of people have anxiety about paying bills next month for their mortgage, making car notes, paying insurance, what it's going to mean for their child's education, that they can't attend school. Like, all those are future oriented things. Phobia is an irrational fear. So something is present in front of you. Let's say the agoraphobia, which is the irrational fear of large groups of people. People that suffer from agoraphobia have trouble going to Walmart. They could never go to Dollywood. Forget that. Not happening. Like, it's just, and maybe you can feel it a little bit. And as I get older, I feel it. When I was your age, when I was very young, I grew up, in Texas, so I go to Six Flags a lot. And man, I could go to Six Flags, guys, and there would be people just shoulder to shoulder. It wouldn't bother me a bit. Now that I'm older, I have to admit, when I go to Dollywood now, peak season, and there's a ton of people, it bothers me a little bit to be around that many people. That's a little bit of what someone from agoraphobia would experience, except for they would have things like they would hyperventilate, pass out, have a lot of really negative outcomes as a result of being around those people. An irrational fear is a phobia. Tiffany, back in the lead. Commanding lead. My goodness. Commanding. This is back to the health psychology chapter. Yeah, definitely a type A. Type A's, you're talking to one right now. So, I always am going to make us sound better than we are. We're ambitious, we're hardworking, we easily get annoyed, we want things done, yesterday. We take on too much. I need it done yesterday. And what do you think that means for those kind of people like me and stress? means we experience a lot more stress than type B, which are more laid back. And there's no type C that I'm aware of, just a throw-in answer. Type Bs are much more passive, relaxed. They don't get as easily stressed because they're not as easily annoyed. PTSD is just a label of a disorder. So type A is what I'm talking about. Type A, by the way, higher correlations with health outcomes like this. This makes me feel horribly uncomfortable. Type A, highly correlated with hypertension, highly correlated with cancer, highly correlated with obesity, all because stress has these negative reactions in our body. As you learned if you watched the film I put out about Robert Sapolsky's research with baboons. All right, Tiffany's still in the lead. Looks like a lot of people missed that one, though. Yeah, we got a smiley face. Another person joined the game. Cool. Okay, that number is just too big, isn't it? Mood disorders, and by the way, on tests, I'm not ever going to ask you for a specific percentage, typically, but that number's just too big. The number is big. It's just not that big. It's around 50%. So around 50% of identical. If one twin has a mood disorder, there's about a 50% chance that the other one will. And if you compare that to just unrelated people altogether, that percentage drops to like around 3%, which shows you the power of genetics in understanding mood disorders. All right. Yes, phobia. We were talking about this earlier. Social, specific, agoraphobia. They're all categorized as anxiety disorders. Neurocognitive disorders would be things like dementias, Alzheimer's, learning disorders. Neurodevelopmental, neurocognitive disorders. Those would all be considered neurocognitive, not so much anxiety. Tiffany's still in the lead, but Smiley Face is on fire. So way to go, Smiley Face. Let's talk about this. Obsession is about thinking, whereas compulsion is about behaving. So, obsession would be something like this. I feel like I'm going to get sick if I touch something. That's the thought. The compulsion that follows, the behavior that follows, is what? Overly sanitizing yourself. We had that bizarre story last week where in Kansas we had people ingesting Lysol. And I wonder, politicians, the president included, I'm not trying to get too political here, but they have to be very careful about what they say right now. Because there are a lot of people that have anxiety-based disorders that if you say something, even though a lot of us will consider it to be completely ridiculous, There are some people that will listen to that and it will fuel intense thinking about that. Well, if I don't have bleach and rinse with bleach in my mouth, if I don't ingest Lysol, if I don't do these things, I'm going to get sick. And that intense obsession and thinking leads to destructive behavior or compulsions that follow. Yeah, obsession is thinking. Emily's on fire. Nice. Climbing up too. I'm curious, as those of you answer for bonus points, can we throw the name? I'm gonna add 500 points onto the score. I can't do it in the game, but we'll add it at the end. 500 points if someone can type in chat what their acronym stands for. All right, I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the typing in the chat. 500 points on top of your Kahoot score if you can give me the actual name of that acronym. I'm going to give you guys 10 seconds. Let's see if we get any responses here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.5, 1. No 500 bonus points. General adaptation syndrome. That's the sequence of physiological reactions by the body due to stress. General adaptation syndrome. SAS and GSA, ASG, those are all just made up. I just made them up. Irrational fears. It's almost like we talked about this a few minutes ago. Yes, specific phobias. It wouldn't be a compulsion because compulsion would be more obsessive compulsion. Fears, irrational fears, are definitely phobias. All right. The game's getting tight. Coming down to the home stretch here, guys. 8 questions left. Okay. So, a process based on the client's expectation for the two of you. Would it always be a process based on the client's expectation? A lot of people show up to therapy with vastly differing expectations than the therapist is willing to entertain or give. It would be group therapy, more specifically group psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is more of a one-on-one exchange to cause positive behavior, change in behavior in a person. Smiley face on fire again. Good job. Why did I include this twice? I don't know. Yeah. No one should miss this one. Come on, guys. Easy answer. Easy answer. Pressure's on. I said it was easy and the pressure's on. Yeah, I just gave you the answer in the previous slide. I would add that the adjustment part of that is you go through difficulty in life. The human experience means there's an adjustment process when you go through that change, like a lot of people are going through that right now. A lot of people are going through adjustment processes of staying at home, being alone, not eating out, having less money, maybe losing your job. All those involve adjustment, psychological adjustment, and a lot of times in therapy, that's what we're focused on, is helping in that process of adjustment. Smiley face still on fire. Love it. 4 in a row. Ooh, this is something we talked about yesterday. Which therapies focus more on gaining insight and less on changing harmful thinking patterns? Essentially, which therapies are insight? So I can tell one of you were with me yesterday, because I can't imagine if you were with me yesterday, you would have missed that question. Because I showed you a humanistic therapy session and I showed you a psychodynamic therapy session, and I talked about how they were both insight-based therapy sessions. Yep, yep. Yeah, we tend to work on all of these things in various therapies. We work on people's ability to forgive themselves. We work on the communication skills, and we work to a large degree on helping patients develop adaptive coping skills. So all of these are plausible answers. So let's talk about it. Here's the thing. If you had not even read the therapies chapter, you should have all been able to answer this question. Here's how. We, starting back from the second week of class, have been talking about humanism and behaviorism and cognitivism. And what we say about humanism? So humanism is different than, let's say, Freud's view that everyone's id, ego, superego, that they're lusting. There's this, you know, part of them that lusts and everything's sexual. We said no. Humanists actually believe that you're good, and you strive to reach what? Your potential. So in therapy sessions involving humanistic therapists, that's exactly how they operate. They, like I showed you yesterday, Steven Sultanoff, the guy I showed you in the therapy session, he did a lot of reflecting. He did a lot of listening. Why? He wasn't being prescriptive, giving the person direct advice. He was helping them arrive at their own insight to achieve their own potential or outcome. Yeah, if you hear operant conditioning, if you hear those terms, bam, you know exactly what kind of therapy we're talking about here. We're talking about behaviorism, behavior modification. It really wouldn't be insight therapy because that's more humanistic or psychodynamic, right? Uh, Active therapies or action oriented therapies, that would be cognitive or behaviorist. And that would be the best response there. Oh, Levi moving up, making a power play at the end of the game here. All right, here we go. This one is something we didn't really talk about yesterday. You could have read it in the chapter though. It's a biomedical therapy. We talked about how there's psychotherapy, talk therapy. There are biological approaches to therapy like surgeries and shock treatment, implanting electrodes in the brain. These are all medical approaches to therapy, and this is one of them. Sometimes what you will have is you will have someone who's so depressed, guys. They've tried psychotherapies. They've gone to a talk therapist. It doesn't work. Then they take drugs. They get on Prozac, some other kind of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, antidepressant medication. And that doesn't work. And then they're institutionalized. They're put in an inpatient treatment facility, and that doesn't work. And they're suicidal. And as a last resort, what we may elect to do is to pass electrical current through their body at such a rate that it causes them to forget why they are depressed. It literally shocks the brain into forgetting. It's one of the last kind of steps that we will take. But if someone's suicidal and nothing else has worked, we will often engage in ECT. And there's some, if you guys want to actually see this, there are some pretty cool ECT therapy videos out on YouTube where you can actually watch an ECT therapy session. All right, Tiffany, you got that one right. 2 more questions. Yes, Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow were the 2 like father figures, if you will, fathers of the humanistic model. And the humanistic model is based on client-centered therapy. And so the Carl Rogers, Abraham Maslow, definitely those 2 guys. All right, nice job, Levi, on that answer. Last one. Here we go. Very good. I honestly didn't know that you guys would do that well. So let's talk about this. Acclimation is not a real thing. I just threw it in there for it has no relevance to this question. Exhaustion is whenever you are just exhausted due to stressors. So that's not really the best answer here, but it's a result of too much stress. The 2 closest answers here are primary and secondary appraisal. So let's contrast those 2 just for a second. If I walk into the classroom, I wish I could with you guys, and I usually use the example. If I walked into your classroom on the day before an exam, right? And I walked in, I'm like, you know what? I made this exam, and it's so hard. Half of you are going to fail. What first happens is you make a primary appraisal, okay? So you're like, okay, hold on. Terry just said half of us are going to fail. That's a stressor. I'm creating stress on you by saying that. But then you have to classify it as a threat or not. And some of the class would hear me say that and go, he's obviously not talking to me because I study and I do mind maps and I did well on his last test and I'm prepared. This threat, this stressor is really not a threat to me at all. Okay. Now, others in the class would clearly assume it as a threat because they'd be like, hold on, I'm not a good student. I've not been reading. I've not been doing my quizzes. I didn't do the mind map. I'm not prepared. Okay, this is a threat. What he said to me is a threat. How am I going to deal with it? So secondary appraisal is, okay, what kind of resources can I gather? I need to reach out to one of those A students and see if I can study with them. I need to take some notes. I need to do some other stuff because this is causing me a lot of stress. This is definitely a threat to me, and I need to deal with it. Primary, secondary appraisals, and estimating stressors and threats. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, our podium. Third place. Look at Levi made the comeback, made it on the podium. Emily with the silver. And with the spotlight, of course, it's Tiffany. Thanks for playing, guys. You guys did it. And Amberlynn and Smiley Face, you guys are runners up. You did a good job. Thanks for playing with me. I hope this experience has prepared you for the exam a bit. I just want to end today with, hey, do you guys have any thoughts? I'll turn my camera back on here. Do you have any thoughts or questions for me as we kind of wrap it up? I'm looking at chat. Yeah, sorry, boys. Yeah, Levi, it's okay. Believe it or not, girls usually outperform us in college. Um, that's not causal. It's just a correlational study, but they tend to do better than us. But look, guys. Hey, I'm gonna open this thing up soon. Probably gonna open the final exam up Thursday of this week. You don't have to take it Thursday, but it will be open as early as Thursday of this week. It will close Thursday of next week, not Sunday, like you're so accustomed to, because the semester ends next week on Thursday. This will be harder. As I said yesterday, this is going to be a more difficult exam than the last exam because Terry screwed up on the last exam and didn't set the time limit to be hard and strict. I won't make that mistake again. It will be strict and hard this time. That's not a threat. I'm not threatening you. It's just to make sure that I have good integrity about academic integrity about the test. It should have a time limit. So it'll be just like exam 3. So think about the difficulty level in your own mind of how exam 3 played out. That's the way that this one will play out. Finish strong. Knock out this week's task. In fact, think about it, guys. You could knock out all the tasks this week, your discussion board, your quiz, look at the materials, watch the videos. You could jump in on Thursday or Friday of this week, and there's 2 things left. There's one more discussion board that's optional. It's bonus points. There's no concept map for exam 4. There is only a class evaluation discussion board where you talk about something you liked about the class, something you didn't like. But literally, you could log in this Thursday, Friday, and you could do both of those 2 things. You could do your final exam, you could do your last discussion board, and be done with this class entirely, even before next week starts. So, the same time as Levi or Dell, the same time as exam 2. So it'll be 50 questions, 40 minutes. And they'll all be multiple choice true false questions. I'm gonna miss doing these live streams with you guys, especially it doesn't shock me, by the way, as I look at the names of the people in this chat who show up every week, and you do, and then I look at the exam scores. It never shocks me as to why some people perform very well on exams and others that I have not heard. There are students from Sevier County, Northview, and Seymour that I have not seen once. I've not gotten one email. They do some work, but it doesn't shock me that you guys do so well on the test. You're very welcome. Yeah, we'll definitely see you guys later. Thanks for hanging out with me. Study hard, knock out this test, and finish the semester strong. So, you guys have a good afternoon. We'll catch you later. I'm gonna end the stream. You can contact me via email if you're having any difficulty. We'll see you guys later.